The bright chime of a cell phone pierced the quiet of the nearly empty office. Emma Taylor glanced up from her computer, scanning the room for the source. It was almost 9 p.m. on a Friday, and the sprawling headquarters of Barrett Industries was a ghost town, except for her and apparently one forgotten smartphone, vibrating insistently on the conference room table. Emma sighed, pushing back from her desk. As executive assistant to Alexander Barrett, CEO of the multi-billion-dollar tech investment firm, her workday rarely ended at 5. But tonight was supposed to be different. She'd planned to finish these quarterly reports and then meet her friends for a much-needed girls' night out. They were probably already ordering their second round of cocktails. The phone continued its persistent ring as Emma approached. She recognized it immediately. The sleek, custom black phone belonged to her boss. Alexander never went anywhere without it, which made its abandoned presence all the more peculiar. In the 3 years she'd worked for him, she'd never once seen him leave it behind. "Mr. Barrett?" she called out, peering down the hallway toward his office. No answer. The cavernous space remained silent save for the humming of the air conditioning and that incessant ringing. Emma picked up the phone, seeing "unknown" flash across the screen. Her finger hovered over the answer button. Protocol dictated she should never answer Mr. Barrett's personal calls. It was a line she'd never crossed, but something felt off. Alexander Barrett was methodical to a fault, obsessively organized. Forgetting his phone was completely out of character. Against her better judgment, Emma swiped to answer. "Hello?" Silence greeted her, followed by what sounded like surprised breathing. "Hello?" she repeated. "This is Emma Taylor, Mr. Barrett's assistant." "Emma," the voice was low, rough. It took her a moment to recognize it as Alexander's, but something was wrong. She'd never heard him sound like this, tense, almost afraid. "Thank God." "Mr. Barrett, is everything okay?" "Listen carefully." His words came in a hushed, hurried tone. "I need you to do exactly as I say. Don't call the police. Don't call anyone. I don't know who I can trust." Emma's heart began to hammer in her chest. "What's happening?" "I'm at the Westlake Mansion, the charity auction." He paused, and she could hear muffled voices in the background. "I've been—" He stopped abruptly, and Emma strained to hear. "I don't have much time. Someone is trying to set me up. I need you to get into my private safe." Emma swallowed hard. The private safe in his office was off limits. She didn't even know the combination. "Sir, I don't—" "The combination is Sarah's birthday." Backwards, Emma froze. Sarah was his late wife, who had died in a car accident 2 years ago. Alexander rarely spoke of her. "Inside there's a red flash drive. I need you to bring it to me. Don't let anyone see you leave with it. And Emma—" His voice grew even more urgent. "Trust no one. There are people in my inner circle who want to destroy everything I've built." The line went silent for several seconds. Emma thought they'd been disconnected until she heard a door open, and Alexander's voice took on an entirely different tone. Smooth, confident, the Alexander Barrett the world knew. "Just in time, Marcus. Shall we rejoin the party?" A deeper voice responded, but Emma couldn't make out the words before the call ended. She stood frozen, the phone still pressed to her ear, her mind racing to process what she'd just heard. Alexander Barrett, the brilliant billionaire known for his unflappable composure and shrewd business decisions, sounded genuinely frightened. The man who had graced the cover of Fortune magazine as the investment visionary of the decade was asking for her help. Emma's gaze drifted toward the hallway leading to his office. She should just wait for him to return. This wasn't her problem, yet something in his voice had triggered an instinctive need to act. With resolute steps, Emma walked to Alexander's office, using her master key to unlock the heavy oak door. The space was immaculate as always, minimalist furnishings accented by abstract art pieces, worth more than she'd make in a decade. Behind his desk hung an original Rothko, and beneath it, disguised as a thermostat panel, was the safe. Emma's fingers trembled as she entered the numbers, 9251984, Sarah Barrett's birthday, but reversed. The safe opened with a soft click, revealing several documents, a small velvet jewelry box, and a red flash drive. As she reached for the drive, her phone buzzed with a text. Glancing down, she saw it was from Charlotte, her best friend. "Where are you? We've been waiting for an hour." Emma quickly texted back, "Emergency at work. Can't make it. I'll explain tomorrow." Slipping the flash drive into her pocket, Emma closed the safe and hurried back to the conference room. She placed Alexander's phone where she'd found it and gathered her things. As she walked toward the elevator, doubt crept in. What exactly was she getting herself into? Alexander Barrett lived in a world of high-stakes business deals, powerful enemies, and wealth Emma could barely comprehend. Yet in 3 years, he'd never asked her for personal help. Despite his intimidating reputation, he'd been a fair employer. Reserved, even cold at times, but always professional and respectful of her work. The elevator doors opened to the parking garage. As Emma stepped inside, a security guard she didn't recognize looked up from his post near the entrance. "Working late, miss?" he asked, his expression friendly enough, but his eyes lingered on her bag a beat too long. "Just finishing up some reports," she replied, forcing a casual smile. "Quarterly deadlines, you know how it is." The guard nodded, watching as she walked to her modest Honda Civic, a stark contrast to the luxury vehicles that usually occupied the executive parking area. As Emma pulled out of the garage, she noticed a black sedan parked across the street slide into traffic behind her. The Westlake Mansion was on the other side of the city, a historic estate often used for high-profile charity events. Tonight was the annual Children's Hospital benefit, the kind of glittering affair that attracted the city's elite. Alexander Barrett, as one of the hospital's biggest donors, would naturally be in attendance. Emma merged onto the highway, glancing repeatedly in her rearview mirror. The black sedan had maintained its distance but was still there, 3 cars back. Was she being paranoid, or was someone following her? Alexander's warning echoed in her mind. Trust no one. As she exited toward Westlake, her phone rang. Unknown number. Emma's pulse quickened as she connected the call through her car's Bluetooth. "Hello?" "Emma, it's Marcus Walsh." The smooth voice of Barrett Industries' chief financial officer filled her car. "Have you heard from Alexander this evening?" Marcus. The name Alexander had mentioned right before hanging up. Why would he be calling her? "No, sir," she lied, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "Is something wrong?" That's strange. He left the benefit rather abruptly. Mentioned something about urgent business. A pause. "If he contacts you, tell him we need to discuss the Meridian acquisition immediately. It's important, Emma." "Of course, Mr. Walsh. I'll let him know if I hear from him." After hanging up, Emma gripped the steering wheel tighter. Marcus Walsh had been Alexander's friend and business partner for 15 years. If Alexander couldn't trust him, who could he trust? The black sedan was still behind her as she turned onto the tree-lined drive leading to Westlake Mansion. Lights blazed from every window of the historic building, illuminating the parade of luxury cars and elegantly dressed guests arriving and departing. Emma parked her car in the overflow lot, suddenly acutely aware of how out of place she would look in her office attire among the designer gowns and tuxedos. But there was no time to worry about that now. She had to find Alexander Barrett and deliver the flash drive before whoever was setting the trap managed to spring it. Emma's heart pounded as she approached the grand entrance of Westlake Mansion. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over marble floors, and the soft murmur of conversation mixed with classical music drifted from the main ballroom. She smoothed down her simple navy pencil skirt, painfully conscious of how her sensible work attire contrasted with the evening gowns and bespoke suits surrounding her. A tuxedoed attendant at the entrance raised an eyebrow. "Invitation, miss? I'm here for Mr. Alexander Barrett," Emma replied, summoning her most professional tone, the one she used when screening his most persistent callers. "I have urgent documents," he requested. The attendant's expression remained skeptical. "Mr. Barrett left approximately 20 minutes ago." Emma's stomach dropped. "Left, are you certain?" "Quite certain. He departed with Mr. Walsh." Marcus Walsh, the same man who had just called her asking about Alexander's whereabouts. Something wasn't adding up. "Perhaps you could leave whatever you've brought with the event coordinator," the attendant suggested, already looking past her to the next arriving guests. "Thank you, but these are confidential. I'll need to deliver them personally." Emma stepped back, mind racing. If Alexander had left with Marcus, why would Marcus call asking about him? And where had Alexander called her from, if not here? As she retreated down the mansion's grand steps, a flash of movement caught her eye. A tall figure in a dark suit was hurrying around the side of the building, toward the gardens. Even from behind, she recognized the distinctive posture. Alexander Barrett. Emma followed, careful to maintain distance as she navigated the manicured pathways. The gardens were dimly lit by scattered landscape lights, the evening shadows providing convenient cover. Ahead, she could see Alexander engaged in what appeared to be an intense conversation with a woman in a burgundy evening dress. Drawing closer, Emma recognized Vanessa Kirby, the company's legal counsel. Vanessa had always intimidated her, brilliant, perfectly polished, and rumored to have turned down a Supreme Court clerkship to work for Barrett Industries. The attorney was gesturing emphatically, her expression urgent. Emma hesitated behind a tall hedge, close enough to catch fragments of their conversation. "Can't go public with this," Vanessa was saying. "The board will have no choice but to—" "I won't be blackmailed," Alexander cut in, his voice sharp. "The evidence is fabricated. The financial records look legitimate. Marcus has the documents ready to present at the emergency board meeting tomorrow. They're going to vote you out, Alexander." Emma's breath caught. A coup at Barrett Industries? Marcus Walsh was trying to oust Alexander from his own company? "The Meridian acquisition is clean," Alexander insisted. "I've done nothing illegal." "The money trail suggests otherwise. Unless you can prove—" Vanessa stopped abruptly, glancing around. "We shouldn't be talking here." Alexander nodded. "My penthouse. 1 hour." He turned to leave, then paused. "Has anyone accessed my office tonight?" "Not that I'm aware of. Why?" "Just a precaution. I need to retrieve something." The pair separated, with Vanessa returning toward the mansion's side entrance, while Alexander continued deeper into the gardens. Emma waited until Vanessa was out of sight before following her boss. The garden path led to a secluded gazebo, overlooking a small pond. Alexander stood with his back to her, his shoulders rigid with tension as he stared out at the water. This was the closest Emma had been to him outside of work functions. Without the barrier of his massive desk between them, he seemed more human somehow, less the untouchable titan of industry, and more a man carrying an impossible weight. "Mr. Barrett," she called softly. He spun around, his expression shifting from alarm to recognition. "Emma," relief colored his voice. "You came. You asked for help," she said simply, reaching into her pocket for the flash drive. "And you've never done that before." His eyes darted to the small device in her palm. "Did anyone see you take it? Did you tell anyone where you were going?" Emma shook her head. "No, but Mr. Walsh called me. He was looking for you, which is strange considering the attendant told me you left with him 20 minutes ago." Alexander's face darkened. "I haven't seen Marcus all evening. He was supposed to meet me here but never showed." He took the flash drive, his fingers brushing against hers. "Thank you, Emma. This contains the original documentation of the Meridian acquisition, the only copy that hasn't been tampered with." "Someone's framing you?" she asked, the reality of the situation finally sinking in. "Yes, tomorrow morning the board will convene for an emergency meeting. Marcus plans to present evidence that I diverted funds through shell companies during the Meridian acquisition. If he succeeds, I'll not only lose my company, but potentially face federal charges." His jaw clenched. It's a lie, of course, but an expertly crafted one. Emma processed this. The Meridian deal had been Barrett Industries' largest acquisition to date, a cutting-edge renewable energy company that had revolutionized solar storage technology. The $4.2 billion purchase had dominated financial news for weeks. "Why would Mr. Walsh do this? I thought you were friends." Alexander's laugh was hollow. "We were, once, before money and power complicated things." He pocketed the flash drive. "Marcus always believed he should have an equal share in the company. When I refused to dilute my controlling interest, he began looking for other ways to take what he wanted." A twig snapped somewhere in the darkness beyond the gazebo. Alexander tensed, placing a protective hand on Emma's arm. "We need to move," he whispered. "My car's parked at the service entrance. Come with me." "I have my own car," Emma protested, even as she followed him down a narrow path leading away from the mansion. "And I guarantee it's being watched. If Marcus called you, he knows you're involved." The reality of her situation hit Emma like a physical blow. In a matter of hours, she had gone from worrying about missing drinks with friends to being entangled in a high-stakes corporate conspiracy. She thought of her small apartment, her modest savings, her carefully planned career path. All of it suddenly seemed fragile, threatened by forces far beyond her control. "Why me?" she asked as they hurried through the darkness. "Why did you call me and not your security team or Miss Kirby?" Alexander glanced back at her. "Because in 3 years you've never given me reason to doubt your integrity. And because whoever took my phone left it where only you would find it. They wanted me isolated from anyone who might help me." They reached a sleek black Aston Martin, tucked discreetly behind a service building. Alexander opened the passenger door for her, an oddly gentlemanly gesture given the circumstances. "I need to access my private servers," he said as he slid into the driver's seat. "The ones in my home that aren't connected to the company network. If I can analyze the original Meridian documentation against whatever Marcus has fabricated, I can prove the forgery." The engine purred to life and they sped down the service road, avoiding the main exit where valets and security would be watching. "But why would someone take your phone only to leave it for me to find?" Emma asked, still trying to make sense of it all. "To make me vulnerable. To ensure I couldn't contact anyone I trust." His hands tightened on the steering wheel. "They didn't count on you answering it. They certainly didn't count on you helping me." Emma glanced in the side mirror, spotting headlights some distance behind them. "I think we're being followed." Alexander checked his rearview mirror and frowned. "We need to lose them before we head to my penthouse." He made a sharp turn onto a side street. "Hold on." What followed was a heart-pounding series of turns, accelerations, and doubling back that left Emma gripping her seat. Alexander Barrett drove with the same precision and confidence he applied to business decisions, each maneuver calculated and expertly executed. "You're good at this," Emma observed, trying to keep the tremor from her voice. "Motorcycles were my first love," he replied, a hint of unexpected warmth in his tone. "Before I built my first company, before Sarah." His voice trailed off, and the brief glimpse of the man behind the Billionaire facade vanished. After 15 tense minutes, the pursuing car was nowhere to be seen. Alexander guided the Aston Martin into an underground parking garage beneath a luxury high-rise in the heart of downtown. "My private elevator," he explained, leading her to a discreet entrance requiring both a key card and fingerprint authentication. "The penthouse takes up the top 2 floors. No one can access it without my explicit authorization." As the elevator ascended, Emma's phone buzzed again. "Charlotte. Everything okay? Getting worried about you." Emma hesitated, then typed, "All good. Work crisis. Talk tomorrow." The lie felt necessary, but left a sour taste. She had stepped into something dangerous, something with real consequences. And for the first time since answering that forgotten phone, Emma wondered if she should have simply left it ringing on the conference room table. The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse. Emma had expected opulence, but what greeted her was understated elegance, open spaces, clean lines, and floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking panorama of the city lights. Alexander moved immediately to a hidden panel in the wall, revealing another, smaller safe. As he worked the combination, Emma noticed a framed photo on a nearby shelf. A younger Alexander with his arm around a laughing woman with kind eyes and copper hair. Sarah, the woman whose birthday had opened the office safe. The woman whose absence seemed to permeate the vast empty spaces of this beautiful home. "Make yourself comfortable," Alexander said, breaking into her thoughts. "This could take some time." He extracted a laptop from the safe and moved to a sleek desk by the windows. "I need to compare the financial records, trace where the forgeries were inserted." Emma nodded, suddenly aware of how exhausted she felt. The adrenaline that had carried her this far was beginning to ebb, leaving her drained. "There's a guest room upstairs if you need to rest," Alexander offered, his eyes already fixed on the computer screen. "This building is secure, but we can't stay long. By morning, they'll have figured out where we are." As Emma climbed the floating staircase to the second level, she couldn't help but wonder what they would do when they found them, and whether helping Alexander Barrett would turn out to be the biggest mistake of her life. Emma awoke with a start, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a guest room more luxurious than any hotel she'd ever stayed in. The events of the previous night came rushing back. Alexander's urgent call, the flash drive, their hasty escape from Westlake Mansion. She had only intended to close her eyes for a moment, but exhaustion had pulled her into a deep sleep. Her phone showed 6:42 a.m. and several missed calls from Charlotte. Emma silently promised to make it up to her friend once this bizarre situation was resolved, if it could be resolved. After freshening up in the ensuite bathroom, Emma made her way downstairs. She found Alexander exactly where she'd left him, hunched over his laptop at the desk. His tuxedo jacket was discarded, sleeves rolled up, and a day's worth of stubble shadowed his jaw. Despite his rumpled appearance, his focus was unwavering, fingers flying across the keyboard. "You didn't sleep," Emma observed. Alexander looked up, blinking as if remembering her presence. "Couldn't afford to. The emergency board meeting is scheduled for 9. He gestured toward the kitchen. "There's coffee. Help yourself." Emma found the sleek kitchen stocked with top-of-the-line everything, yet surprisingly devoid of personal touches. She poured coffee into a simple white mug and returned to find Alexander staring at the screen, a mixture of triumph and fury in his expression. "I found it," he said, his voice tight. "The discrepancies in the financial records. Marcus created a perfect paper trail, suggesting I siphoned nearly $50 million through a series of shell companies during the Meridian acquisition." He turned the laptop toward her. "Look at these transfer records, the dates, the account numbers, all seemingly legitimate." Emma leaned in, scanning the complex financial documents displayed on the screen. "How did you prove they were fake?" "Metadata," Alexander replied. "Every electronic document contains hidden information, who created it when it was modified. The files Marcus plans to present to the board show creation dates that are accurate, but I've found microscopic inconsistencies in the transaction logs. Certain timestamps don't align with the global banking system's verification protocols." Emma blinked, struggling to follow. "And that proves the forgery. It's a start, but not enough to definitively clear my name." Alexander ran a hand through his already disheveled hair. "I need to trace who actually created these documents. The metadata has been professionally scrubbed, but nothing is ever truly erased in the digital world." He stood abruptly, pacing before the windows. "What I don't understand is why Marcus would risk everything on such an elaborate scheme. He's already wealthy, respected. Why this? Why now?" "The Meridian technology," Emma suggested, surprising herself with the confidence in her voice. "Everyone in the office knows it's potentially revolutionary. The new solar storage cells could transform energy markets globally." Alexander stopped pacing, studying her with newfound interest. "You've been paying attention." Emma felt her cheeks warm under his gaze. "It's my job to pay attention. To meeting schedules and travel arrangements, perhaps. Not to the technical aspects of our acquisitions. I like to understand what I'm part of," she said simply. A ghost of a smile touched Alexander's lips before disappearing. "You're right about Meridian. Their technology is worth far more than the $4.2 billion we paid. Early testing exceeds all projections. Once fully implemented, it could make traditional energy companies obsolete." He paused. "Marcus has significant personal investments in conventional energy. Investments he kept hidden from me." "So this isn't just about taking over Barrett Industries," Emma reasoned. "It's about burying the Meridian technology before it threatens his other holdings." "Precisely." Alexander returned to the laptop, pulling up another set of documents. "I've been tracing Marcus's investments through various proxies. He stands to lose billions if Meridian succeeds, and he'd do anything to prevent that, including destroying me." Emma's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Where is he? We know you're involved. Last chance to help yourself." She showed the message to Alexander, who frowned deeply. "They're getting desperate. The board meeting is in 2 hours. What happens if we don't make it to the meeting? Without me there to defend myself with evidence, they'll vote me out based on Marcus's fabricated documents. By this afternoon, I'll be persona non grata at my own company, and by tomorrow the SEC will likely open an investigation." His jaw tightened. "I'll lose everything I've built." The weight of the situation settled on Emma's shoulders. This wasn't just about a billionaire's corporate drama. It was about justice, about truth, and somehow she had become central to the outcome. "We need to go to the authorities," she suggested. "Show them what you found." Alexander shook his head. "With what proof? I have suspicions and minor digital anomalies. Marcus has a paper trail that would convince any prosecutor." His expression hardened. "No, we need to find concrete evidence of who created these forgeries, and we need to get to that board meeting." Emma's phone rang, Charlotte again. This time she answered. "Emma, thank God, I've been worried sick." "I'm fine, Char. Just caught up in—" "Are you with Alexander Barrett?" Charlotte interrupted, her voice strange. Emma froze. "Why would you ask that?" "Because 2 men in suits came to my apartment this morning asking about you. They said they were from Barrett Industries Security and needed to locate Mr. Barrett urgently. Charlotte's voice dropped to a whisper. They seemed scary, Em. Not like regular security. They wanted to know if you'd contacted me, where you might go if you were hiding. Emma's blood ran cold. Charlotte, listen to me. Don't tell them anything. They're not from security. Too late. I mentioned you had an uncle in Chicago you sometimes visit. Was that wrong? Emma, what's going on? I can't explain right now. Just be careful. I'll call you when I can. Emma ended the call and turned to Alexander. They're questioning my friends. They went to Charlotte's apartment. Alexander's expression darkened. Marcus is pulling out all the stops. We need to move. This location isn't safe anymore. Where can we go? If they're tracking down my contacts, they'll be watching every property you own. Not every property. Alexander closed the laptop and moved to a closet, extracting a small duffel bag. I have a place off the grid, a cabin I purchased through a shell company after Sarah died. Not even Marcus knows about it. But the board meeting will make it. He tossed her a sweatshirt and jeans from the bag. These might be big on you, but they're better than yesterday's work clothes if we're trying to be inconspicuous. Emma caught the clothing, noticing a delicate monogram on the sweatshirt. S.B. Sarah Barrett. She glanced up to find Alexander watching her, an unreadable expression on his face. They were going to charity, he said quietly. I never got around to it. Emma nodded, understanding the weight of what he was offering, not just clothing, but a piece of his past, his pain. Thank you. While Emma changed, Alexander made several calls, speaking in cryptic terms about contingency plans and security protocols. When she returned to the living area, he was dressed in jeans and a simple grey Henley that made him look remarkably different from the imposing CEO she knew, more approachable, more human. Ready? He asked, slipping the laptop and flash drive into a backpack. For what exactly? To catch a forger, expose a conspiracy, and save a company. He offered a grim smile. Just another day at Barrett Industries. They took the service elevator to avoid the main lobby, emerging into a secondary parking area where a nondescript SUV waited instead of the Aston Martin. Borrowed from the building manager, Alexander explained as they climbed in, less conspicuous. As they drove, Emma's thoughts turned to the strange journey that had brought her here. 3 years of perfectly organized schedules, meticulous meeting notes, and professional distance, all shattered by one answered phone call. Why did you become my assistant? Alexander asked suddenly, as if reading her thoughts. The question caught Emma off guard. I needed a job after graduate school. The position at Barrett Industries was prestigious, well paid. But you have a master's in environmental engineering. You could have pursued a technical role, yet you chose to schedule my meetings and manage my calendar. Emma stared out the window, watching the city give way to suburbs. My father's company collapsed when I was in college. Environmental cleanup firm, small but respected. A larger corporation falsified data about a containment project. Blamed my father when things went wrong. He lost everything. His reputation, his business, eventually his health. She turned to meet Alexander's gaze. I wanted to understand how power works from the inside. I figured there was no better place to learn than next to someone who had mastered the system. Alexander was silent for a long moment. And what have you learned? That power isn't inherently corrupt. It's the people who wield it. She paused. You've never been particularly warm, Mr. Barrett, but I've never seen you be cruel or dishonest. That matters. Something shifted in Alexander's expression, a softening around the eyes, perhaps. Thank you, Emma. That may be the most genuine compliment I've received in years. The SUV turned onto a narrow road leading into densely wooded hills outside the city. After several miles, Alexander pulled onto an even narrower dirt track, barely visible among the trees. The cabin is just ahead, he said, as they bounced along the rough path. We'll have about an hour to regroup before we need to head to the board meeting. The cabin turned out to be a modern timber and glass structure nestled perfectly into the hillside, modest by billionaire standards, but still strikingly beautiful. Sarah designed it, Alexander said quietly as he unlocked the door. She never saw it completed. Inside, the space was warm and inviting, nothing like the sterile penthouse. Photographs lined the walls, Alexander and Sarah hiking, sailing, laughing together. A life that ended too soon. Alexander moved immediately to a desk in the corner, setting up his laptop. We have limited time. I need to compile everything I've discovered about the forgeries into a presentation the board can't ignore. Emma nodded, scanning the cabin. I'll make coffee. As she worked in the small kitchen, Emma noticed a framed photograph she hadn't seen initially. It showed Alexander, Sarah, and Marcus Walsh arms around each other on what appeared to be a yacht. They looked genuinely happy, the kind of friendship that seemed unbreakable. What had changed? Her phone buzzed with another text from the unknown number. The police are now involved, obstruction charges being prepared. Last chance, Emma. She brought the coffee and showed Alexander the message. They're escalating. As expected. He didn't look up from the screen. The meeting starts in 90 minutes. They're getting desperate. Emma sat beside him, watching as he assembled a damning case against Marcus, tracing IP addresses, comparing timestamps, highlighting the microscopic inconsistencies that proved the documents were forgeries. There, Alexander said finally. It's not ironclad, but it's enough to create reasonable doubt. Combined with records of Marcus's energy investments, it paints a compelling picture of motive. He leaned back, rubbing his eyes. For the first time since she'd known him, Alexander Barrett looked truly tired, not just physically exhausted, but worn down by betrayal. He was my best friend, Alexander said softly. Best man at my wedding. He helped me build Barrett Industries from nothing. He held me up after Sarah died. His voice caught slightly. I never saw this coming. Emma hesitated, then placed her hand over his. I'm sorry. Alexander met her gaze, genuine gratitude in his eyes. Then something shifted in his expression. Wait, Sarah's memorial fund. What about it? After Sarah died, I established a charitable foundation in her memory. It operates independently from Barrett Industries, but Marcus insisted on being on the board of directors. Out of respect for Sarah, he said. Alexander turned back to the laptop, typing rapidly. The foundation uses a separate accounting system. If Marcus was going to create a false paper trail, he might have practiced there first, where there was less scrutiny. Emma watched as Alexander accessed the foundation's records, scanning through financial reports with practiced ease. There, he said suddenly. 3 small transfers to companies I've never heard of, all authorized with my electronic signature. But you didn't authorize them? No. These are test runs, Marcus seeing if he could forge my authorization without detection. Alexander's face was alight with grim satisfaction, and he made a critical mistake. The Foundation system automatically backs up all access logs to a secondary server that even I rarely check. Emma leaned closer, watching as Alexander pulled up a log file showing exactly who had accessed the system and when. There it was in plain text, Marcus Walsh, accessing the system using administrator credentials on dates that perfectly aligned with the suspicious transfers. We've got him, Alexander said, his voice quiet but intense. Concrete proof that he falsified documents using my electronic signature. As if on cue, the sound of vehicles approaching reached them through the cabin's windows. Emma moved to look outside and felt her heart drop. 2 black SUVs coming up the drive. Alexander shut the laptop and shoved it into the backpack. Is there another way out? Emma asked. Yes, through the back. He moved quickly, leading her to a rear door that opened onto a narrow path winding down the hillside. My motorcycle is in a shed about 50 yards down. It's our only chance to reach the board meeting in time. They slipped out, just as the sound of car doors slamming echoed from the front of the cabin. The path was steep and slick with morning dew, forcing them to half-run, half-slide down toward a small wooden structure partially hidden by trees. Inside the shed was a sleek black motorcycle, not the flashy sports bike Emma might have expected, but something more practical and powerful. Ever been on one of these? Alexander asked as he wheeled it outside. Emma shook her head nervously. Hold tight and lean when I lean, that's all you need to know. He handed her a helmet, donned one himself, and swung his leg over the seat. We have exactly 47 minutes to make a 30-minute trip and change into appropriate attire for the board meeting. Emma climbed on behind him, awkwardly wrapping her arms around his waist. The closeness felt strange after years of careful professional distance, but there was no time to dwell on it. The motorcycle roared to life, just as shouts came from the direction of the cabin. Hold on, Alexander called over his shoulder, and then they were flying down the hill, away from the pursuing men, and toward a confrontation that would determine the fate of everything Alexander had built, and perhaps their safety as well. Wind whipped past as the motorcycle wove through the winding forest road, Alexander handling each curve with practiced precision. Emma clung to him, her arms wrapped tightly around his torso, the strange intimacy of their position overshadowed by the urgency of their flight. Through gaps in the trees, she glimpsed one of the black SUVs in pursuit, though Alexander's superior knowledge of the backroads gradually put distance between them and their pursuers. "We need to lose them before we reach the main highway," Alexander called over his shoulder, voice barely audible above the engine's roar. He veered suddenly onto an even narrower trail, little more than a deer path cutting through dense undergrowth. The motorcycle bucked and jolted over exposed roots and rocks, branches whipping past dangerously close. Emma squeezed her eyes shut, focusing on maintaining her grip as Alexander navigated the treacherous terrain. After what seemed like an eternity, the path widened again, depositing them onto a paved country road with no sign of the SUVs behind them. Alexander accelerated, the powerful machine surging forward as they rejoined civilization. Emma's phone buzzed in her pocket, but checking it at their current speed was impossible. 20 minutes of tense silence followed as they wove through increasingly dense traffic, finally pulling into an underground parking garage beneath a luxury boutique in the city's financial district. "My tailor keeps a private fitting room here," Alexander explained as they dismounted. "He's discreet and owes me several favors." Emma followed him to a service elevator that opened directly into an opulent showroom. An elderly man with a measuring tape draped around his neck looked up, his surprise at their disheveled appearance quickly masked by professional composure. "Mr. Barrett, an unexpected pleasure. Giovanni, I need your help. Urgently." Alexander checked his watch. "We have 22 minutes. The tailor nodded once, instantly understanding the gravity of the situation. "This way." What followed was a whirlwind of activity. Giovanni produced a selection of designer suits for Alexander and, after a brief assessment of Emma's measurements, disappeared into a back room, returning with several women's business attire options that fit her surprisingly well. "Samples from our latest collection," he explained with a wink. "Not yet available to the public." In the private dressing room, Emma quickly changed into a perfectly tailored charcoal pantsuit that probably cost more than her monthly salary. As she emerged, she found Alexander waiting, transformed once more into the impeccable CEO she'd known for 3 years. Crisp white shirt, navy suit, power tie. Only the intensity in his eyes and the slight shadow of stubble he hadn't had time to shave betrayed the chaos of the past 18 hours. "You look," he began, then paused, something shifting in his expression. "Thank you, Emma, for everything." Before she could respond, Alexander's attention turned to his phone. "Cars waiting upstairs. We have 17 minutes to reach Barrett Tower." They thanked Giovanni, who waved away Alexander's attempt to pay. "My gift, Mr. Barrett, for special circumstances." The sleek town car waiting at the curb navigated the morning traffic with practiced efficiency, the driver seemingly aware of the urgency without being told. Emma finally checked her phone. 6 missed calls from unknown numbers, 2 from Charlotte, and a text message from Vanessa Kirby. "Where are you?" "Board assembled early. Marcus presenting now." Emma showed Alexander the message. His expression hardened. They moved up the meeting. "We need to hurry." Barrett Industries occupied the top 15 floors of a gleaming skyscraper downtown. As they approached, Emma could see unusual activity at the main entrance. Additional security personnel checking IDs, turning some employees away. "They've restricted access," Alexander observed. "My security codes will have been deactivated." "So how do we get in?" A smile, the first genuine one Emma had seen from him, briefly transformed Alexander's face. "I built this building, Emma. There's always another way." The town car dropped them a block away. Alexander led her down a side street to a nondescript service entrance where delivery trucks were unloading. With confident strides, he approached an older security guard who broke into a wide grin at the sight of him. "Mr. Barrett? Didn't expect to see you down here." "Hello, Frank. Bit of an unusual morning. Need to use the freight elevator." The guard's expression turned serious. "Lot of strange orders today, sir. Someone up top says you're not to be admitted to the building under any circumstances." He leaned closer. "Bunch of nonsense, if you ask me. You built this place." "I appreciate your discretion, Frank," Alexander said quietly. Service elevator's all yours, sir. Keycard still works for that system. It's on the old network. Frank winked at Emma. Good luck with whatever's happening up there. The freight elevator was industrial and unglamorous, a stark contrast to the polished executive lifts Emma typically used. As they ascended toward the 50th floor boardroom, Alexander removed the laptop from his backpack and powered it on. We'll have one chance, he said, eyes fixed on the screen as it booted up. Marcus will have physical copies of his forged documents for the board. I need to present this evidence clearly and convincingly enough to create doubt. Emma nodded, anxiety building as the elevator continued its climb. And if they don't believe you? Alexander met her gaze, his expression resolute. Then I lose everything I've built, but I won't go down without a fight. The elevator slowed, approaching the executive floors. Emma straightened her suit jacket, suddenly acutely aware that she was about to enter a room of the most powerful people in the business world alongside Alexander Barrett, not as his assistant, but as his ally. Ready? Alexander asked as the elevator doors opened to a service corridor. Emma took a deep breath. Ready? They moved swiftly through the back hallways, avoiding the main reception area where security would surely stop them. As they approached the boardroom, voices became audible, Marcus Walsh's smooth, authoritative tone carrying through the partially open door. Regrettable situation, but the evidence is indisputable. Alexander has betrayed not only this company, but all of us personally. The shell companies, the diverted funds, it's all documented here. Alexander paused just outside, signaling Emma to wait. Through the gap, she could see the long mahogany table surrounded by solemn-faced board members. Marcus stood at the head, where Alexander would normally preside, gesturing to documents spread before each person. Vanessa Kirby sat midway down the table, her expression troubled as she examined the papers. If there are no further questions, Marcus continued, I move that we vote immediately on the removal of Alexander Barrett as CEO and refer these findings to the Securities and Exchange Commission for... I believe that would be premature, Marcus. Alexander pushed the door open fully, striding into the room with the calm confidence that had built a business empire. Emma followed a step behind, clutching her tablet. The boardroom froze in collective shock. Marcus recovered first, his momentary surprise masked by a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. Alexander, how unexpected. We were just discussing some concerning discoveries about the Meridian acquisition. Yes, I heard. Alexander's voice was steel wrapped in silk. Quite fascinating, considering I have evidence proving those documents are elaborate forgeries. He set his laptop on the table and turned to address the stunned board members. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for my unconventional arrival, but as you'll soon understand, there have been extraordinary circumstances requiring extraordinary measures. Marcus's smile tightened. Alexander, this is inappropriate. You're currently under suspicion of serious financial misconduct. Ms. Taylor, he nodded toward Emma, has no place in a confidential board meeting. On the contrary, Alexander replied, Ms. Taylor has been instrumental in uncovering a conspiracy to frame me and take control of Barrett Industries. He connected his laptop to the room's projection system. What you're about to see will change everything you think you know about the situation. For the next 15 minutes, Emma watched as Alexander methodically dismantled Marcus's case. He highlighted the metadata inconsistencies, showed the suspicious timestamps, and finally displayed the damning access logs from Sarah's foundation that proved Marcus had been practicing document forgery. But the most compelling question, Alexander concluded, is why? Why would my CFO and oldest friend betray me in such a calculated manner? He brought up a new screen showing Marcus's hidden investment portfolio. These are Marcus's personal holdings in traditional energy companies, investments he concealed from Barrett Industries despite our clear conflict of interest policies. Murmurs spread around the table as the board members began to grasp the implications. The Meridian technology threatens to make these investments worthless, Alexander continued. By removing me and burying Meridian's advancements, Marcus stood to protect billions in personal wealth while gaining control of the company he's always believed should be partly his. Marcus's composure finally cracked. This is absurd. You can't possibly expect the board to believe these wild accusations over documented financial records. Actually, Marcus, Vanessa Kirby interjected, rising from her seat, the evidence is quite compelling. She turned to Alexander. I had my suspicions when I examined the Meridian documents more carefully last night. The transaction timestamps didn't align with international banking protocols, something only someone with your attention to detail would notice, Alexander. She produced a flash drive of her own. I took the liberty of running my own verification tests this morning. They confirm everything Mr. Barrett has presented. Marcus's face flushed with anger. This is a coordinated attack on my character. I've served this company faithfully for 15 years and betrayed it in 15 minutes, Alexander replied quietly. He turned back to the board. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we have a decision to make. What followed was the most extraordinary board meeting of Emma's career. Security was called, not to remove Alexander, but to escort Marcus from the premises. The board voted unanimously to retain Alexander as CEO and to initiate an immediate forensic investigation into Marcus's activities. By noon, Barrett Industries had issued a press release announcing full confidence in Alexander Barrett's leadership and the suspension of Marcus Walsh pending investigation. As the boardroom emptied, Alexander remained seated at the table, the weight of the past 24 hours evident in his posture. Emma lingered, unsure of her place now that the crisis had passed. "You should go home," Alexander said, finally looking up at her. "Get some rest. You've more than earned it." Emma hesitated. "Will you be all right?" A tired smile touched his lips. "Thanks to you, yes. Barrett Industries will survive. And so will I." He stood, crossing to where she waited by the door. "You saved more than just a company today, Emma. You saved something I'd nearly forgotten existed." "What's that?" "Trust." He held her gaze. "I've spent years keeping everyone at arm's length, convinced it was the only way to protect what I'd built. Even before Sarah died, I was isolated. By choice." Emma nodded, understanding. The Alexander Barrett she'd worked for had always been brilliant but remote, a commanding presence rather than a person. "I'd like to offer you a new position," he continued. "Environmental Director for the Meridian Integration. Your background in environmental engineering would be invaluable, and after what you've done, you deserve work that challenges you." Emma blinked in surprise. "You researched me." "I pay attention to the people who matter," he replied simply. "Think about it. Take some time." "I don't need time," Emma said. "I'd be honored." Alexander's smile reached his eyes this time. "Then we have a deal." He extended his hand and Emma took it, a gesture that felt like the beginning of something neither of them could have anticipated when she answered that forgotten phone. 3 months later, the Barrett Industries holiday party was in full swing at Westlake Mansion, the same venue where their unlikely alliance had begun. Emma, now settling into her role as environmental director, stood by the grand staircase watching colleagues celebrate. The Meridian integration was proceeding ahead of schedule, and early implementations of the solar storage technology were exceeding even the most optimistic projections. Marcus Walsh had been indicted on multiple charges of fraud and corporate espionage. His trial was scheduled for spring, with Vanessa Kirby assembling an airtight case against him. The scandal had briefly rocked Barrett Industries' stock price, but Alexander's transparent handling of the crisis had ultimately strengthened investor confidence. "Quite a different scene from the last time we were here." Alexander's voice came from behind her. Emma turned to find him offering a glass of champagne. "Much better circumstances," she agreed, accepting the drink, "though I'm still getting used to attending these events as a guest rather than working them. You've earned it." Alexander clinked his glass against hers. "The board approved your environmental impact proposal for Meridian's global rollout, by the way. Unanimous vote." Emma smiled. "That's fantastic news." A comfortable silence fell between them as they watched the party. In the month since the conspiracy had unraveled, something had shifted in their relationship. A mutual respect that had gradually evolved into a genuine friendship. Alexander had become more approachable, not just with Emma, but with the entire executive team. The impenetrable facade had given way to a leader who still demanded excellence, but now did so with humanity. "I never properly thanked you," Alexander said quietly, "for answering that phone, for trusting your instincts when everything pointed to danger." "I think you've thanked me plenty," Emma replied. "The promotion, the corner office with the view, material things." Alexander shook his head. "I'm talking about something more important. You reminded me that some people are worth trusting. After Sarah died, I closed myself off. built walls that seemed necessary at the time. Emma met his gaze. And now? Now I'm learning that some walls need to come down. His eyes held something she hadn't seen before. Warmth, possibility, perhaps even hope. Would you consider joining me for dinner next week? Not as colleagues discussing meridian projections, but as friends. Maybe something more eventually, if that's something you might want. Emma felt a smile spread across her face. I'd like that very much. As they turned back to the party, Emma reflected on the strange twist of fate that had brought them to this moment. One forgotten phone, one split-second decision to answer a call not meant for her. She had saved Alexander Barrett from a trap that day, never suspecting that in doing so, she might be opening the door to something neither of them had been looking for, but both, perhaps, had been waiting to find.